In the world of horse racing, you've got names and then you've got legends. But for decades, one of Europe's greatest modern legends was a total bust in Japan. We're talking about Galileo, a bloodline that absolutely dominated everywhere else on the planet, except on Japanese turf. But you know what? That's all changing, and fast. So let's dive into this incredible, kind of shocking reversal of fortune. First, let's just make sure we're all on the same page about how big a deal Galileo was. He wasn't just a successful sire, he was an institution. For more than a decade, he was the top dog in Great Britain and Ireland, cranking out winner after winner in Europe's biggest races. Seriously, if a major long-distance race was on the calendar, you could bet a Galileo offspring was one of the favorites. He was, in every single sense, the king. But here's the crazy part. When that royal bloodline was brought over to Japan, the results were, well, they were shockingly bad. The formula that just crushed it in Europe completely fell flat. For years and years, breeders and fans were left just scratching their heads, staring at one simple, undeniable fact. Galileo's magic seemed to just stop dead at the Japanese border. And look, this wasn't just a gut feeling or a bit of bad luck. It was backed up by cold, hard data that, over many years, built this solid reputation of failure. Let's take a look at the numbers that really tell this story. So what are we looking at here? This was the win percentage for Galileo's direct offspring in Japan. Out of 44 of his horses brought over, only 15 ever managed to win a single race. But here's the real kicker, the most damning statistic of all. Not one of them, not a single one, ever won a major stakes race. In a country that lives and breathes high-stakes racing, that is a complete and total shutout for Europe's greatest sire. Now, you might be thinking, hey, 34%, that doesn't sound that terrible. And you'd be right in a vacuum. But compare it to the other imported bloodlines. Sires from the US, their kids were often winning over half their races. Even other European sires were hitting that 40 to 50% mark. So yeah, Galileo wasn't just underperforming, he was basically at the bottom of the class. And so the narrative was set in stone. The verdict was in, and it was unanimous. Japanese racing, with its typically firm, fast turf, demands an explosive, turn-of-foot speed. Galileo's kids, on the other hand, were bred for the tough, grueling classic distances in Europe. They were seen as these durable, stamina-filled engines that just couldn't find that extra gear when it mattered. The consensus was simple. His genetics were a fundamental mismatch. Case closed. For years, that was pretty much the end of the story. The Galileo line, unsuitable for Japan. But then, very recently, the data started telling a completely different tale. A counterattack that absolutely nobody saw coming was underway. Just check out these recent sire rankings. All of a sudden, sitting there in number 5, you've got Mozu Ascot. And down at 15, Poetic Flare. And what do they have in common? Yep, they're both from the Galileo line. You know, seeing just one name this high up the list would have been a shock. Seeing 2? That's not a fluke. That's a revolution. So this brings us to the million-dollar question, right? After all those years of failure, how did this supposedly mismatched bloodline suddenly start churning out elite winners? What on earth changed? Well, the answer isn't some single silver bullet. It's actually a combination of 3 distinct factors that have completely reshaped the landscape for this bloodline. So let's break them down, one by one. All right, factor number 1. We absolutely have to talk about the horse who just tore up the rulebook, Galileo's son, Frankel. He wasn't just another one of Galileo's kids, he was a straight-up genetic anomaly who completely changed the game for this entire bloodline. See, while most of Galileo's stars were all about those long distances, Frankel was a speed-focused miler. He was an absolute beast on the track, retiring undefeated with 14 wins in 14 starts. And, this is crucial, his maternal line was pure American speed, tracing right back to the legendary Stormcat. This potent mix created a version of the Galileo line that no one had ever seen before. And if you need proof, this slide says it all. It's just, wow. Take a look at the data for 2 full brothers, both sons of Galileo. Frankel's offspring in Japan have an incredible 46.9% win rate. His brother, Noble Mission, who had a more traditional stamina profile, his win rate is less than 10%. This is the aha moment. This is the smoking gun. It proves that the key wasn't just the Galileo name. It was the specific, speed-infused genetics of Frankel that made all the difference. Okay, the second factor is a little more subtle, and it all comes down to time. You see, as we move further down the generations from Galileo himself, his direct genetic influence starts to get watered down, which allows other traits to pop up. To really get this, we need a super quick genetics lesson on what's called the speed gene. Horses can have two copies of it. The C type is all about speed and power, perfect for sprinting. The T type is linked to stamina and endurance, ideal for those long-distance marathon races. So let's see how this plays out across the generations. You start with Galileo himself. He was a TT type, pure, uncut stamina. Now, when he's bred to a mare that has some speed in her, his sons can end up as a CT, a mixed type. And this is where it gets really interesting. When that son is then bred, it's now genetically possible for his offspring, that's Galileo's grandson, to inherit two C copies and become a CC, a pure speed type. And just like that, a line that was famous for stamina can over time produce horses perfectly built for speed. Okay, so if not all Galileo line horses are built the same, how can breeders spot the ones that have the right stuff for Japan? Well, it turns out there's a new litmus test, a specific achievement in Europe that's become an incredibly powerful predictor of success. The magic ticket seems to be winning a top-tier Group 1 race at a mile. I mean, look at the successful sires we've been talking about. Frankel, Poetic Flare, Glean Eagles, all of them won the prestigious 2000 Guineas in England. That race is like the ultimate test of speed for 3-year-olds, and winning it is pretty much definitive proof that a stallion has the elite speed needed to thrive and pass on in Japan. So the key for the stallions is this very specific speed-proven profile. Got it. But that's only half the story. There's another equally fascinating way Galileo's influence is starting to bloom in Japan, and that's through his daughters. And this is where it gets really cool. It's a total plot twist. The very same stamina that was a liability in his sons becomes a massive asset in his daughters. When you take a stamina-rich Galileo mare and breed her with one of Japan's elite, speed-focused sires, you get the perfect balance. The stamina gives them the endurance to see out a race, and the sire's speed gives them that devastating finishing kick. It's the perfect genetic cocktail. Okay, so let's put this all together. After decades of being written off, the Galileo line is now finding success as both a sire line and a maternal line. So what does this all mean for the future of breeding in Japan? Now, it's really, really important to understand the nuance here. The wrong conclusion would be to think that suddenly any horse with Galileo in its pedigree is going to be a star in Japan. No. The right conclusion is that a very specific profile has emerged. A speed-oriented descendant of Galileo, probably one with a Group 1 win over a mile, has the ticket to success. And here's why this matters on a grand scale. For years, Japanese breeding has been dominated by just a few powerful bloodlines. The arrival of this very specific type of Galileo line introduces new blood into the gene pool. It's called an outcross, and it's incredibly valuable. It's like opening the windows in a stuffy room. It injects new vigor, helps prevent inbreeding, and creates all sorts of exciting new genetic combinations for the future. So it seems the Galileo paradox is finally solved. It took a genetic freak like Frankel, the slow dilution of stamina over generations, and a new understanding of what to look for, but they've finally unlocked the potential of this legendary line. And it leaves us with one fascinating question to chew on. As breeders get smarter about these genetic puzzles, what other famous bloodline, once thought impossible for Japan, is going to be the next to crack the code?